Picture this. It's 6 a.m. Your alarm screams at you from across the room. Your warm bed feels like a sanctuary, and every fiber of your being begs you to hit snooze. Sound familiar? You tell yourself just 5 more minutes. But deep down, you know those 5 minutes will become 50. You know that by giving in now, you're setting the tone for another day of broken promises to yourself. Another day where you'll look in the mirror tonight and feel that familiar sting of disappointment. Maybe it's not the morning alarm for you. Maybe it's that gym membership collecting dust, that book you swore you'd read, that skill you promised to master, or that business idea you keep pushing to tomorrow. We've all been there, caught in the endless cycle of good intentions followed by crushing self-defeat. But what if I told you that there's an ancient philosophy, battle-tested by emperors and slaves alike, that holds the key to breaking this cycle forever? What if the very struggles you're facing right now were faced by Marcus Aurelius in his palace, by Epictetus in chains, by Seneca in the Roman Senate? The Stoics understood something profound about human nature that we've forgotten in our age of instant gratification and endless distractions. They knew that discipline isn't about perfection. It's about becoming the person who keeps their word to themselves, especially when no one else is watching. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These weren't just pretty words written by a philosopher in an ivory tower. These were the desperate thoughts of a man trying to govern an empire while battling his own inner weaknesses. Right now, as you're watching this, you might be thinking, "I've tried everything. I've read the books, watched the videos, made the plans. Nothing sticks." I hear you. I feel that frustration because I've lived it too. That moment when you realize you've become a stranger to yourself, when the person you are doesn't match the person you promised you'd become. But here's what the Stoics discovered that changes everything. Discipline isn't a feeling, it's a practice. It's not about waiting for motivation to strike like lightning. It's about understanding the fundamental truth that you already have everything you need inside you right now to become disciplined. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 Stoic principles that will fundamentally rewire how you think about discipline. These aren't just concepts, they're weapons forged in the fires of real human struggle. By the end of this video, you'll have a completely different relationship with the voice in your head that says, "Maybe tomorrow." If you're ready to finally become the disciplined person you've always known you could be, hit that like button right now, drop a comment below, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're subscribed because you don't want to miss a single word of what's coming next. Don't skip any part of this video. Each principle builds on the last. Now let's dive in. Number 1. The power of present moment awareness. Here's the brutal truth that most people never realize. You're not avoiding discipline because you're weak. You're avoiding it because you're living everywhere except the present moment. Think about it. When that alarm goes off, where is your mind? It's already fast-forwarding to how tired you'll be at work, how hard the workout will be, how much effort it will take. You're not just fighting the present moment, you're fighting an imaginary future that doesn't even exist yet. Epictetus, who spent years as a slave before becoming one of history's greatest teachers, understood this perfectly. He said, "Wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants." But he wasn't just talking about material things. He was talking about the wealth of mental clarity that comes from wanting only what's in front of you right now. I remember lying in bed one morning, knowing I had to get up and write. And suddenly, it hit me. I wasn't avoiding writing. I was avoiding the entire imaginary day I had constructed in my mind. The struggle, the frustration, the possibility of failure. But none of that was real. The only thing real was the simple act of putting my feet on the floor. This is where most people get discipline completely wrong. They think it's about powering through difficulty, about gritting your teeth and forcing yourself through pain. But the Stoics knew better. They understood that when you shrink your focus to just this moment, just this breath, just this choice, just this step, discipline becomes almost effortless. Your mind is constantly pulling you into tomorrow's problems and yesterday's failures. But discipline lives in the space between your next heartbeat. It lives in the micro decision you're making right now about whether to keep watching this video or let your attention drift to your phone. The beauty of present moment awareness is that it makes everything manageable. You're not committing to a lifetime of 5 a.m. workouts. You're just getting up right now. You're not writing a novel. You're just writing the next sentence. You're not transforming your entire life. You're just making the next right choice. When you master this principle, something magical happens. The voice in your head that says, "This is too hard," loses its power because it can only exist when you're projecting into an imaginary future. In the present moment, there's only action or inaction. And action in the present moment is always possible. Number 2, understanding your internal locus of control. This next principle will completely change how you see every obstacle in your life. Most people live as victims of their circumstances, but Stoics live as architects of their responses. Epictetus divided all of existence into 2 categories: things that are up to you and things that are not up to you. Sounds simple, right? But this distinction is so powerful that it turned a crippled slave into one of the most influential philosophers in human history. Here's what's up to you: your thoughts, your judgments, your decisions, your actions, and your character. Here's what's not up to you: everything else. The weather, other people's opinions, the past, the future, your genetics, the economy. Everything outside your direct control. But here's where it gets interesting for discipline. Most people think their lack of discipline is caused by external factors. I don't have time. I'm too tired. My family doesn't support me. I don't have the right resources. Every single one of these statements gives your power away to something outside yourself. I used to blame my lack of consistency on my busy schedule, on stress, on not having the perfect environment. Then I realized I was living in a prison I had built myself, a prison made of excuses that felt so real, so justified, that I never questioned them. The Stoics understood that the moment you take complete responsibility for your discipline, you become unstoppable, not because external obstacles disappear, but because they become irrelevant to your choices. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire while dealing with plagues, wars, and personal tragedies. Yet he maintained his daily practices of writing, reflection, and self-improvement. How? Because he knew that his discipline belonged to him, not to his circumstances. When you truly internalize this principle, something incredible happens. You stop waiting for the perfect conditions to be disciplined. You stop needing motivation from outside sources. You realize that discipline is an internal decision that no external force can touch. This doesn't mean you ignore real obstacles or pretend they don't exist. It means you focus all your energy on what you can control, your response to those obstacles. You become like water, finding a way around, through, or over every barrier, because your discipline comes from within. Your circumstances will never be perfect. Your schedule will always have challenges. There will always be easier options. But none of that matters when you understand that discipline is an internal choice that no external force can make for you. Number 3. Embracing discomfort as your teacher. Here's a truth that will cut through every excuse you've ever made. You're not avoiding discipline because it's hard. You're avoiding it because you've been taught that discomfort is the enemy. But the Stoics saw discomfort differently. They saw it as a teacher, a trainer, a forge that shapes character. Seneca deliberately practiced poverty, sleeping on hard floors and eating simple food, not because he was masochistic, but because he understood something profound. Voluntary discomfort builds involuntary resilience. Think about the last time you avoided doing something you knew you should do. What were you really avoiding? The physical sensation, the mental effort, the uncertainty? Most of the time, we're not avoiding the task itself. We're avoiding the temporary discomfort that comes with it. But here's what changes everything. Discomfort is not your enemy. It's your discipline training in disguise. Every time you choose the easy path, you're training yourself to be weak. Every time you choose discomfort, you're training yourself to be unbreakable. I used to think that successful people somehow felt less discomfort than I did, that they had some secret that made hard things easy. But I was completely wrong. They feel the same discomfort. They've just learned to interpret it differently. When you feel that resistance, that voice saying this is hard, instead of seeing it as a stop sign, start seeing it as a signal that you're exactly where you need to be. That discomfort isn't telling you to quit. It's telling you that you're growing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just philosophical poetry. It's a practical instruction manual for discipline. The thing you're avoiding isn't blocking your path to discipline. It is the path to discipline. This principle transforms everything because it reframes your entire relationship with difficulty. Instead of asking, "How can I avoid this discomfort?" you start asking, "What is this discomfort trying to teach me?" Instead of seeing obstacles as reasons to quit, you see them as opportunities to strengthen your discipline muscle. The most disciplined people in the world aren't the ones who never feel resistance. They're the ones who have learned to dance with discomfort, to welcome it as an old friend who's come to make them stronger. They've discovered that on the other side of every discomfort you're avoiding is the person you're meant to become. Number 4. The practice of negative visualization. This next principle might sound dark, but it's actually one of the most liberating tools the Stoics ever developed. It's called negative visualization, and it will completely rewire your relationship with discipline and motivation. Here's how it works. Instead of only imagining positive outcomes, you deliberately spend time visualizing what happens if you continue on your current path of avoiding discipline. Not to torture yourself, but to create crystal clarity about what's actually at stake. Seneca wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster." The Stoics practiced negative visualization not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared, mentally and emotionally. Most people avoid thinking about the consequences of their undisciplined choices because it's uncomfortable. But this avoidance is exactly what keeps them trapped. They tell themselves, "It's not that bad," or "I have plenty of time to change," while their future self pays the price. Let me paint you a picture that might sting but needs to be said. Imagine yourself 5 years from now if nothing changes. Same habits, same excuses, same promises you don't keep to yourself. You're sitting in the same place with the same unfulfilled dreams, watching other people live the life you told yourself you'd have someday. How does that feel? That tightness in your chest, that frustration, that's not punishment. That's clarity. That's your internal compass telling you that this path leads somewhere you don't want to go. But here's the beautiful part. Once you truly visualize the cost of indiscipline, discipline stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like a rescue mission. You're not depriving yourself of comfort. You're saving your future self from a life of regret. I remember the day I really let myself feel the weight of where my lack of discipline was taking me. I saw myself at 60, full of what-ifs and if-onlys, watching younger people achieve the dreams I had abandoned. It was one of the most uncomfortable visualizations I'd ever done, but it was also the moment everything clicked. Negative visualization isn't about dwelling in fear, it's about using clarity as fuel. When you truly understand what you're saving yourself from, getting up early doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like freedom. Working out doesn't feel like effort. It feels like self-respect. Discipline doesn't feel like restriction. It feels like the key to the life you actually want. The Stoics knew that a clear vision of what you're moving away from can be just as powerful as a vision of what you're moving toward. Number 5. Building unbreakable daily rituals. Here's where everything we've talked about becomes practical and actionable. The Stoics weren't just philosophers sitting around thinking deep thoughts. They were practitioners who understood that wisdom without application is worthless. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, started every single day the same way, with written reflection. Not when he felt like it, not when he had extra time, every day without exception. This wasn't rigid routine. This was intentional ritual that anchored his entire character. The difference between routine and ritual is intention. Routine is something you do mindlessly. Ritual is something you do with purpose, meaning, and reverence. When you transform your disciplines from routines into rituals, they become unshakable. But here's the key that most people miss. Your rituals must be so small and simple that you can't talk yourself out of them, even on your worst days. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." The Stoics understood that massive transformation comes from tiny, consistent actions. I used to try to overhaul my entire life every Monday morning. Massive workout plans, complex morning routines, ambitious goals that looked impressive on paper but crumbled the moment life got messy. I was building castles in the air instead of foundations in reality. Then I learned the Stoic approach. Choose one tiny discipline and make it sacred. Maybe it's 5 minutes of morning reflection. Maybe it's reading 1 page of philosophy. Maybe it's doing 10 push-ups. The size doesn't matter, the sacredness does. When you treat your daily discipline like a sacred ritual, something that connects you to your highest self, it becomes bigger than just a habit. It becomes a daily vote for the person you're becoming. It becomes a way of honoring the promise you made to yourself. The magic happens when you realize that keeping a small promise to yourself every single day builds an unbreakable foundation of self-trust. And when you trust yourself completely, when you know with absolute certainty that you'll do what you say you'll do, discipline stops being something you struggle with and becomes simply who you are. Start with one thing. Make it small enough that you can't fail. Make it meaningful enough that it matters. Make it daily and non-negotiable. Treat it like a sacred appointment with the person you're becoming. This is how the Stoics built character that could withstand anything, one intentional choice at a time. Number 6. The discipline of self-forgiveness. This might be the most counterintuitive principle in this entire video, but it's also the most crucial. True discipline requires learning how to forgive yourself when you fail. Most people think discipline is about being harsh with themselves, about punishment and guilt and shame. But the Stoics understood something profound. Self-hatred never created lasting change. In fact, it's the fastest way to destroy the discipline you're trying to build. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." Notice he didn't say, "Be like the person who never gets hit by waves." He said, "Be like the rock that gets hit, but remains unshaken." You're going to fail. You're going to have days when you hit snooze. You're going to skip workouts. You're going to eat the donut. You're going to procrastinate. This isn't a character flaw. This is being human. The question isn't whether you'll fail. The question is what you'll do the moment after you fail. I spent years trapped in a cycle that maybe you recognize. I'd start strong, mess up, feel terrible about messing up, use that terrible feeling as an excuse to give up completely, then hate myself for giving up, which made starting again feel impossible. I was my own worst enemy, sabotaging my discipline with my response to imperfection. But here's what changes everything. The moment you mess up, you have two choices. You can either spiral into self-criticism and give up, or you can treat yourself with the same compassion you'd show a good friend and simply begin again. The Stoics called this the discipline of desire, not just managing what you want, but managing how you respond when you don't get what you want, including the discipline you want from yourself. Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Your failure isn't the end of your discipline journey, it's just the end of one attempt and the beginning of the next one. Self-forgiveness isn't about making excuses or lowering standards. It's about understanding that discipline is a practice, not a perfect performance. It's about treating yourself like someone you're committed to helping succeed, not someone you're trying to punish into submission. When you master self-forgiveness, you become unstoppable because failure stops being catastrophic. It just becomes information. You don't lose months of progress because of one bad day. You just get back up and keep going. Number 7. Living as if today matters most. This final principle ties everything together and will fundamentally change how you approach every single day for the rest of your life. The Stoics had a practice called memento mori, remember death. Not to be morbid, but to remember that this day, this moment, this opportunity to be disciplined is not guaranteed to come again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. But even more powerful is this. You could die today. Let this determine your actions, words, and thoughts." Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're living as if you have unlimited time to get your act together, as if discipline is something you can always start tomorrow, as if the person you want to become can wait while you figure out the perfect plan, the perfect moment, the perfect circumstances. But what if today was it? What if this was your last chance to honor the promises you've made to yourself? What if this was your final opportunity to show up as the person you claim you want to be? I don't say this to create anxiety. I say it to create urgency. Not frantic, desperate urgency, but the kind of focused urgency that comes from understanding how precious this moment really is. When you truly grasp that today might be all you have, something beautiful happens. The excuses disappear. The negotiations with yourself stop. The voice that says, maybe tomorrow, gets quieter because tomorrow isn't guaranteed, but right now is real. This principle doesn't mean you ignore the future or stop planning. It means you recognize that the future is built from a series of todays, and the only day you can actually influence is this one. The Stoics lived with what they called cosmic perspective, understanding their place in the vastness of time and space. From this perspective, most of what we worry about becomes insignificant, but what remains becomes crystal clear. How you show up today matters. Your discipline today isn't just about today's results. It's about who you're becoming. It's about the legacy you're building one choice at a time. It's about honoring the brief, miraculous fact that you're alive right now and capable of choosing who you want to be. When you live as if today matters most, discipline stops being something you'll do someday and becomes something you do right now. You now have 7 principles that emperors and slaves used to forge unbreakable discipline. But knowledge without action is just entertainment. The Stoics believed that philosophy was useless unless it changed how you lived. Your transformation starts the moment you close this video. Choose one principle that resonated most deeply. Apply it today, not tomorrow. Today. Remember, you already have everything you need inside you right now. Discipline isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming who you already are underneath all the excuses and delays. If this video helped you, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, drop your affirmation in the comments, and subscribe for more life-changing content. Your disciplined life starts now.